tēnā koutou e hoa mai mā takitaki mai nei. I rungi te kaupapa rā nei, ara ko te reo Māori, ko te reo rangatira o tēnei whenua. Kei te mihi, kei te mihi, kei te mihi ki a koutou katoa. He uri a hau no kotirana, I whānau au ki reira, te kau o kutau, I hara mai au ki tēnei whenua noho ai. Ko Benihi tōku maunga, ko Di te awa, ko North te moana. He kiri te ahau, engari he Māori ākutama no Ngāti Awa. Kāti mō tēnei wā, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. I've been asked to speak to you today about the influence of Māoritanga and indeed te reo Māori on my life. I speak first and foremost as a mum, also as a former teacher in primary school, secondary, and also a lecturer in tertiary. I also come with a background in social work, so many perspectives that I bring to this kōrero today. My current role is to implement a strategy that the government has for te reo Māori in schools. It's a 4-year strategy and we're just about at the end of that. There's 1 more year to go, implementing it in primary and secondary schools. I was born in Scotland, as I said in my mihi mihi, and at the age of 10, my family immigrated to New Zealand on what in those days was called the assisted immigrant passage, which was basically for poor working class people to come to a new country and have better opportunities. It was a scheme that in those days cost £10 for the whānau. We moved to a low decile suburb called Maryvale, decile 1 in Tauranga. And as fate would have it, that was one of the most significant moments in my life, because next door to us in our housing corporation house in Maryvale was a Māori whānau. Their surname was Layson and they were from Hawera in Taranaki. There were 7 children in that whānau and they had a very, very strong influence on me. At the time of my moving from Scotland, I was the only child left at home with my parents. And so the whānau next door would take me everywhere with them. I became, if you like, their 8th child, their whāngai. And I was lucky enough to be carted off to collect kaimoana, to visit their nannies, and to just go to general whānau hui. Even at the age of 10, I remember that my being Pākehā was initially something significant for the old nannies. One in particular, the nanny Nicholas, who lived in Omokoroa. When I went there on a Sunday afternoon with the whānau, she would order the other mokos to get out the best cup for me. One of her very few crockery cups, albeit chipped, while the rest of the whānau had the normal, everyday enamel ones. And she would even go to the lengths of sending the mokos to the dairy to get Madeira cake, because for some reason she had this notion that Pākehās have Madeira cake with their cup of tea. I feel truly blessed and privileged to have been part of their family life during my formative years. And it's almost as if I can't remember anything of Scotland prior to my coming here, because the most significant chunks of my life have been in the Māori world. The greatest gift that whānau gave me was the sense of whānau, the sense of whanaungatanga, and the sense of manaakitanga. Whānau was the focus, and manaakitanga was their raison d'etre. So it was that having been under the influence of the Lace and whānau for 7 years, at the age of 17, I went off to university, long way from Tauranga actually, in Otago, in Dunedin. So I guess it was no surprise that I fell for a Māori. I was only 17, and after 9 years of a relationship, na piki me na hieke, we got married. And that began the next phase of my life in the Māori world, because it was through his people, through his whānau Ngāti Awa, that I learned more about the formalities of Māoridom, the protocols on the marae. He would teach me things like, don't wash the tea towels with the rest of the clothing, because tea towels are associated with food, which is noa, and our clothing is associated with our bodies, and our bodies are tapu, and tapu and noa just don't mix. So even now I'm training my own children to leave the tea towels in a separate bucket in the wash house, and we'll just wash them together without any other clothing there. He taught me things like always wearing a long black skirt to a pōwhiri, to cover up modestly at a pōwhiri. And once the formalities are over, then you can change into your jeans and your track pants. I also learnt by going to tangi with him to wash my hands on leaving the urupa, the burial ground. And I still do that today, even though he and I have parted 20 odd years ago. Those things that I learnt in my early years have followed me through. Another tikanga that he taught me was in the wharenui, when the people are stretched out on their mattresses, not to step over their legs, but go round the bottom of their feet, but not step over them, especially so of a woman stepping over a man. But I get the greatest gift, I guess, for me was hearing the language and being in awe of the oratory that I saw on the marae, and the parry and thrust of the whai kōrero. And I was adamant that when Trevor and I had our children, I really wanted to be able to speak them in te reo Māori. It's quite a lofty goal, and it was hard. But I really wanted those children in the 70s to be bilingual and bicultural. So I went off to varsity to learn formally. And that was in the early 70s, where very few people were going to varsity to learn Māori. Indeed, very few varsities were even offering te reo Māori in those days. And especially very few Pākehā wanting to learn the Māori language. Prior to that, I'd also had a go at teaching myself te reo Māori. I'd picked up the book called Te Rangatahi, the textbook. It's an old-fashioned textbook, very grammar-based, still being used in some places in New Zealand. And I had taught myself through to school C level by going to adult night classes and working at home on my own through the textbook. So I had a basic grounding prior to going to do it formally at university. And then I was blessed along the way in my tertiary education of te reo Māori with really illustrious mentors and tutors of te reo Māori. I was lucky enough to be taught by Wiremu Parker at Victoria University, Sid Mead of Ngāti Awa, and Ruka Broughton from Taranaki. In fact, it was Ruka, the late Ruka, who blessed my two children, Wiremu and Honi, in the traditional baptism service in the stream, a baptism known as the tohi rites. So I was blessed with those amazing tutors with amazing depths of knowledge. So I guess, as you can see, every step of the way seemed to be charted for me. Our immigration to New Zealand in the first instance, being placed next to Māori family in the Housing Corporation house, being exposed to mātauranga Māori through my ex-husband's whānau, and having these incredible Māori language tutors and mentors along the way, in an environment and a climate when very few Pākehā people were learning Te Reo Māori. And so it was that when I did have my firstborn, I kept my vow of being able to speak Māori. And when that newborn baby was handed to me in the hospital by the nurse, my first words were Te Reo Māori. That was pretty scary for me because I didn't know if I could sustain it thereafter. But I was determined, and I carried on until such time that they went to school at the age of 5. And sadly, because they went to a mainstream school, a lot of that Māori was put on hold, I guess, not undone, but put on hold, put in reserve. And it's only now, really, to be truthful, that at the ages of 26 and 24, they're now getting back into their Māoritanga, their reo Māori, and the Māori world per se. In the interim, they have studied Māori formally at secondary school. They've got their qualifications. One has gone on and majored at varsity doing it, but even that formal side of their learning was just them going through the motions. It's only now, as young adults, they're really thirsty for more and wishing they'd listened more to their mum, I guess, along the way. I guess something else I probably need to talk about in the 70s was that there was a dearth of Māori language resources in those days. Not like today when you can go to an ordinary everyday bookshop like Whitcoulls and there's a number of Māori language books, sometimes in dual text, sometimes just with a Māori theme but in English text. So in those days I was laboriously translating English children's books into Te Reo Māori, even things like The House That Jack Built and The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which I still have. In fact, I've saved all of those books for my mokos when they arrive, because they're so special to me, giving my children a diet right from year 1 of Māori books. Fortunately, our mokos generation won't be having to superimpose the Māori text over the English, because the ministry has seen fit to produce a number of beautiful resources for Māori medium education. So things have improved a lot in the past 2 decades. Getting back to Wiremu and Honi, my sons, in their mainstream school education, I would have to say they had a marvellous education across the curriculum. However, I think the system failed them in terms of Te Reo Māori, validating their culture and giving them access to good quality Māori language education. And frankly, I want a better deal for my mokos in terms of what mainstream education can offer, by way of providing access to their language and validating their culture. Because as marvellous as their teachers were, there were very few who tapped into their Māoritanga or who integrated Te Reo Māori into their teaching. My job at the ministry was made for me, I guess. I'm working to my passion. Hitherto, we've never had a Māori language curriculum document that would guide the teaching of Te Reo Māori in English medium schools. We've had other curriculum documents for different languages, Spanish, French, German, but incongruously nothing for Te Reo Māori. So that's part of my job at the ministry, was to get some curriculum guidelines written, such that we now have the document in draft, Te Reo Māori in the New Zealand curriculum, which was launched middle of '07 by Parikura Horomia and Joris de Vries, the Race Relations Conciliator. And we launched that deliberately on Race Relations Day. And I'm happy to say that the indicative findings so far are that our stakeholders, our teachers, our end users are delighted with this document in every aspect. And we will be hopefully launching the final of this document next year, in the middle of next year, hopefully in Māori Language Week, at a very special place. It's a marae by Lake Rotoiti, where the idea of curriculum guidelines for the teaching of Māori was first mooted over 25 years ago. So people have waited very patiently for this document. So that's where we're hoping to celebrate the fact that the ministry has fulfilled its promise, albeit 25 years later, and produced these guidelines. There are other resources too that will support the teaching of Te Reo Māori. One special one of significance is the Form 1 and 2 resource, the Year 7 to 8 resource for the teaching of Te Reo Māori. It's a multimedia package, and it's called Ka Mau Te Wihi, which means awesome, and it is awesome. It's a bit like a soap opera for teenagers, if you like. We see them in real life situations, at home, at school, playing sport, on the marae, at kapahaka practice, shopping, texting, all the things that teenagers do. We've also got discussions about tikanga and about Māori language grammar. We've interspersed waiata. So that's going to make a real difference to our tamariki who are learning and engaging with Te Reo Māori in years 7 to 8 prior to them making some choices about which languages they're going to be learning later on, either in secondary school or later on in their lives. And it certainly ties in with the Māori Language Commission's message that it's cool and sexy to learn Te Reo Māori for our young people. What I'd like to do is make a plea to you people who are watching and listening, because I believe that as educators we need to be better equipped to teach diverse students so that all our tamariki can achieve their potential. For me, I've been able to see the world through a different lens, through a different window. It's given me a different perspective on life. I'm able to come to situations, problems or issues with two perspectives now. I feel doubly blessed. For me, Te Reo Māori has been a real bonus. And that's what I want for my own children and for my mokos. It's an added value. In the education of my mokos, I want the same as non-Māori want and more. And the extra added value is Te Reo Māori for them. And I think that Te Reo Māori has benefits not just for Māori children, but for all New Zealanders, such that I think it could enhance this nation's identity if more of us embrace Te Reo Māori and a knowledge of tikanga Māori. When I compare with the 70s when I started to learn, I think our current climate with our rangatahi today is far more appreciative and supportive of Te Reo Māori being heard, being visible in our society. In fact, when I see people singing E hoa atua at sports matches, I figure that some of our young people probably think it was always sung in Te Reo Māori. which is quite the converse. It's quite a breakthrough that we have got it in Te Reo Māori latterly. But our young people who are coming up now think it's the norm. When I think of Te Reo Māori and how precious it is, I'm mindful of the fact that many of the world's languages have been lost. One estimate is that nearly half of the world's 7,000 languages will be extinct by the end of this century. For me, language tells us who we are, where we come from. It's the lifeblood of every culture. Indeed, Ken Hale, who's an American linguist, he said, when you lose a language, you lose a culture, you lose intellectual wealth, you lose actually a work of art. And the analogy he uses is the loss of a language is like dropping a bomb on a museum. Indeed, back in the 70s when I was learning Te Reo Māori for the very first time, Richard Benton, one of the researchers in those days, a Pākehā researcher in fact, he described the state of Māori language as being in those days perilous. And he asserted that this language would only survive if both Māori and non-Māori valued it. Indeed, Te Puni Kokiri's recent research has reiterated the same sort of thing, that attitudinally there are more non-Māori now supporting Te Reo Māori and its visibility in our society, which augurs well for the future. There's now more intergenerational transmission of Te Reo Māori from one generation to another. I would like to really implore you people to support any Te Reo Māori initiatives in the schools that you'll be working in. There are 97% of our Māori children sitting in mainstream schools, that is English medium schools. Only 3% of Māori children are in pure Māori medium schools. So it's behoving on us, I think, as teachers in mainstream schools to honour Te Reo Māori, to validate Māori children's culture and to allow them to have access to their language. And I would also encourage you people yourselves to go on the journey with Te Reo Māori, the journey that I've been so fortunate to have been on, so that you also can see the world through different lenses, different windows, different perspectives. I'd just like to share with you something that's really precious to me. It was a gift given to me when I left Te Puni Kokiri, where I was a policy analyst for a few years. It would have to be the most special gift I've ever received, and totally took me by surprise, because most people leaving government departments get something rather more prosaic. What I was given was a korowai, a cloak. And one of the female members of Te Puni Kokiri had woven this cloak specially for me, along with her mother. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to walk you through the meaning of this cloak from the weaver's words, so that you can see, for me it typifies the journey that I've had since I was 10, since coming from Scotland. The weaver, Te Ata King, has told me that she deliberately chose these fair, light-coloured pieces of flax to depict my Scottish ancestry. So the bottom row, if you like, typifies me, Alice Patrick, Te Uri no Kotirana, from Scotland. The next band, the red band, illustrates my firstborn, Wiramu. whom I spoke Māori to from the moment that the nurse presented him to me as a newborn 5-pound preem baby. Now you'll note close up that the light coloured harakeke permeates into Wirumu's red colours, and that's because of the influence that I have had and hopefully will continue to have in his life. Similarly, the purple blue band at the top represents Taku Pōtiki, my youngest born hone. And you'll see, if you look closely, that the light coloured flax is also permeating into his blue colour. Likewise, his older brother Wiremu, the red, is permeating into Hone's life as well. So those are the influences that we each have on each other. In the true spirit of ako, I guess, ako being to learn and to teach, that in their lives I've been in a position that I can offer them some teaching, but also I'm learning heaps from them as they've become young adults. So that's what it represents, myself and my Scottish ancestry, and the influence that that has had on my son Wiremu in the red and my youngest son Hone in the purple blue. And to adorn the cloak, the weaver, Te King, has overlain these beautiful pawa pieces, and they symbolise the next generations to come. Aku mokopuna. And I can't wait. I can't wait to gift some of the te reo Māori that I was gifted back to them, to take them on the marae, to read them the Māori stories that I read to their fathers, Wiremu and Hone, to play Māori games with them. Because it's my hope and my dream that this next generation of mokos will not have to fight for te reo Māori like previous generations have had to. That it's their given right, their heritage. They will have access to their language and also access to good quality teaching of that language. And we all need to get on this waka to support this kaupapa in this true spirit of cooperation. We all need to work together, ka mahi tahi, tātou katoa. Just like the threads in this tapestry are all working together to make a beautiful whole, so it is that we need to work together and cooperate so that te reo Māori will be alive in our schools and in our communities and in homes. The weaver, Te King, also has written the meaning of the inside of the korowai. She's made that with wool to keep me warm, obviously, but also she said the red wool depicts my heart and the warm ngākau I have for te reo Māori and things Māori. And she's made that to symbolise that it will keep me warm and also my whānau warm in the next generations to come. And hopefully I can continue to influence other people as I become an older woman and maybe slow down, finish my mahi at the ministry, knowing that the next generation of tamariki in our schools will now have a curriculum document to guide their teachers in the teaching thereof. And that our mokos, yours and mine, will have many more opportunities to consolidate te reo Māori, which in the end augurs well for this nation and for our identity. Kia ora koutou katoa. There's a song that illustrates this message of cooperation by using the analogy of a tapestry where the threads are woven together. It's a song called Whakarongo Akio, and it encourages people to work together to get the job done, to bring out the right outcomes. Whakarongo akio ki te tangi a te manu e re re runga rawa e. Tui, 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 tui a. Tui ai runga, tui ai raro, tui ai waho, tui ai roto. Tui, tui, tui a. Ka rongo te po, ka rongo te ao. Tui, tui, tui a. That song talks about actually the stitching. Tui means to stitch, to sew. The stitching together of the fabric where all the threads are important and they all make a contribution to the finished garment. So once again, I encourage you people to make your contribution to this kaupapa hei hapa i te reo Māori, to assist the progress of te reo Māori in our schools and in our communities. Nō reira e hoa mā kia kaha ki te ako i te reo Māori, ki te ako i ngā reo katoa. Nō te mea he taonga tuku iho mai i te atua. He taonga ngā reo katoa. Kia kaha koutou. Language is a most prized gift for all people. And it's within that gift that is the very essence of our being. Nō reira, kia kaha koutou katoa. Kia ora.